Hello and welcome to Model Aviation Live. I'm your host, Jay Smith, Executive Editor of Model Aviation Magazine. And I was slightly inspired today by our guest who we'll be talking to in just a few minutes, but they have the most amazing computer setup that I've seen with multiple monitors. So today instead of connecting into my laptop, I'm using my desktop. So you get a little different view. I've got a couple of guitars behind me, a guitar and a bass, and the Godzilla pinball flyer. So you get to see, a little different background. So the first thing I want to share with you is, if you recall, we talked about when Derek Micko had been on the show. You know, he designs a lot of aircraft for the magazine. And I had asked him about the possibility of letting the readers decide what the next project would be. And he agreed. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we had 8 options. There they are. And so the voting ended, and I have to tell you that for most of the voting, the P-39 was winning. And just kind of like the Indianapolis 500, we had change for the lead right at the end, and the F4U Corsair ended up winning by 2 votes. Obviously the P-39 was second. So Derek is working on the Corsair. And let me just share with you real quick. I asked him to write something about it, as far as what he knows right now about wingspan or details. This is specifically from Derek. I'm pleased to announce that after a close race, the winner of the next model design poll is the F4U Corsair. I am excited to start working on this project and share it with Model Aviation readers in a future issue. The design will be the continuation of the Park Flyer series. The projected wingspan will be between 30 and 34 inches with a weight of around 15 ounces, allowing it to be able to be flown in medium-sized parks. The model's plans will be available through AMA's plan service as well as online. A short kit will be available through Manzano Laser, and 3-scale parts and power system will be available through Rabbit Models. Similar to the other models in the series, it will be offered with templates for printed tissue covering and different color schemes. And we're even talking about one of them being a racing scheme. So possibly a couple of military schemes and a racing scheme. The model might also feature options for landing gear and other scale details. Thanks for the votes. And we also talked about possibly a later issue of Model Aviation next year, him sharing the P-39. Since it was so close, we want to do that. And if you read my editorial in the September issue when it comes out, I think I've got him convinced to also do a World War I aircraft. He's never designed a World War I aircraft, and I think I've got him convinced to do possibly a Fokker D8, because he didn't want to mess with flying wires or a biplane. So obviously exciting stuff to look forward to, but the first thing that we'll see is the Corsair, possibly followed by the P-39, and then later potentially a Fokker D8. Also, just wanted to talk really briefly about the National Fun Fly that we had just a few weeks ago, and our guest was there, so he can also talk about it in just a minute. But it was a great event. It was our best attended event as far as the National Fun Fly is concerned. That's been going on for a few years, and it was our best attended event. So the most people had come to the event. We did have some weather issues on Saturday, but Friday was a really good day. Saturday was a little hit and miss with weather, and Sunday was a really good day. And we had a lot of vendors, including Innov8tive Designs, Lucian Miller, who will be our guest that'll come out in just a moment. But we had several vendors on site, which was really nice. Cal Orr was one of them, and he brought some really amazing planes that he flew. And Hobby King was actually there, and just a lot of different vendors. Dubrow, I don't want to miss anybody, but there was a lot of vendors there. And so we were really excited about all that. And so without further ado, let me go ahead and bring out our guest, which is Lucian Miller from Innov8tive Designs. Hi, Lucian.
Hey, Jay. How you doing today?
Good. So tell us a little bit about your thoughts about the Fun Fly this year. I know you were there last year, and this year was bigger. So tell us a little bit about your insight into it.
Yeah, it was a great event. I mean, where I live in Monroe, Michigan. I'm like 200 miles from Muncie, so it's about a 3.5-hour drive with a little traffic for me to get there. So, I can, comes pictures of our booth there. The one on the right there is at the AMA show this year, and the one on the left was from the Toledo booth. And my wife, Juanita, comes to the shows with me. And we left Friday morning at about 7 o'clock, and we got to the flying field at a little after 10 and got set up and got everything unloaded from the truck and the booth set up, and had a lot of people show up. It was a really good turnout for the event. And as you said, Saturday it rained from like 9 to noon. So we didn't come out until about 11:30. We were kind of watching the weather radar, and we wanted to plan it so that we got out there just about the time the rain let up. And then we set everything up, and there was a brief rain from, I don't know, probably about 3:30 till 5 again. But then after that, it cleared up and the sun came out. It was really nice, and people flew. And I was a bit surprised because usually Sundays, everybody's packing up and going home day at these events. But on Sunday, there was a huge turnout, probably because of the fact that it got partially rained out on Saturday. A lot of people came back Sunday, and it was great. When we go to these shows, we get a chance to meet a lot of our customers that, we only talk to on the phone. So yeah, I had a great time. Got to see Cal Orr's big glider that we featured in one of our Model of the Month email blasts last month, and got to see that firsthand live, and it's powered with one of our big badass motors, and got to see a lot of other really nice airplanes out there. So yeah, the National Fun Fly, if anybody was thinking about coming and didn't, and you're within a driving distance to get there, be sure and come, because it's a great opportunity to meet a lot of great people, fly at one of the best RC flying fields in the country. And while you're there, you can go to the AMA museum and check that out, and drive around and see all the 1,000+ acres of property that they have down there and all the different flying sites. So it's a great event. It's definitely worth going to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just going to keep getting bigger and better, I believe. It's going to grow, and there's going to be continued momentum. And we had free flight going on there. And, I got to talk to people like Mike Welshins and Ted Allenbone. And there was, a lot of free flighters. And for the first time, we also had paramotor flying going on. So that was interesting to see. But
the airport right behind the property was also doing vintage biplane rides and like an old Stearman or something like that all weekend. So you could just popped up the road a mile and gone over to that little airport and got a cool vintage biplane ride as well.
Yeah, I heard it was only like $80, I believe, to take a ride. Mm-hmm. I think it was a new standard biplane, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, I flew in one at Old Rhinebeck. They have one there that they give rides, and it's amazing to do. But I also want to touch on, you mentioned that your wife Juanita comes to the shows with you, and you have exciting news if people don't know that you got married late last year. So congratulations.
Yeah, we got married 2 days before Christmas last year. There's us at our wedding, and there's our CFO, our chief feline officer, Mr. Miyagi. He keeps track of things here at the office, and make sure that we stay in line here. He helps me process my orders every morning. He comes up, sits on my keyboard, and helps me process orders in the morning. And then he comes out and hangs out in the warehouse with me. He's a stray cat that wandered into our warehouse about 2 years ago that was in really rough shape. Somebody had dumped him here, and he was malnourished and had tapeworms and fleas and ticks and all kinds of ear mites and everything else. And we felt sorry for him, so we nursed him back to health. And he just loves us because we kind of saved him. And so now he's our shop mascot, and he hangs around the place with us. But Juanita and I is kind of an interesting story. We've actually known each other for 46 years. We met when we were 15 years old at church at youth group. And we're really good friends. We used to go to concerts together, and in fact we were in a band together when we were like 18, 19 years old. And Juanita ended up marrying the lead guitar player in our band, Howard. I was the rhythm guitar player, and she got married, went off with Howard, had 3 kids. I ended up getting married a few years later and moved to Florida, moved to California. She moved to Delaware, and back in 2016, I ended up moving back here to my hometown of Monroe, Michigan. I brought the business with me and reset up shop here. And about 6 months after I moved back, I got a message from Juanita saying, I heard you moved back to Michigan in December of last year. Why would you do that? And you explained the situation, and I had ended a relationship, and she had ended a relationship she was with, and she was looking to move back home so she could be by her brother and stuff. And we said, hey, I always had a crush on you. She says, yeah, I know. I say, hey, ain't too late to give it a whirl. She says, all right. So we started dating, and a couple years later, we got engaged in July of 2019, and we were planning on getting married in 2020, but then COVID hit and shut everything down. Jay, you know all about that. Same thing happened to you and your plans. And so we had to put it off. And then my parents got ill, and I was taking care of them. And finally, we just said, hey, we just got to do this. So we made arrangements and got married at the local country club in their little room they have off at the side. And it was a very intimate, small family wedding, only 30 people there, some of her family, some of my family. And we had a great wedding. And then we went down to Tampa, Florida for a week and hung out down there and did all the Tampa, touristy stuff. And her son, David, lives down there. So we got a chance to see him a couple of days while we were down there and do some stuff with him. And now, actually, Juanita's been working here with me now for the past couple of years. So if you call Innov8tive Designs and you hear a woman's voice, it's my wife, Juanita, answering the phone. She's the office manager here and keeps me in line and organizes everything here and, keeps the warehouse clean and keep all the paperwork filed and all that kind of good stuff that I need to do because I'm sort of a crazy mad scientist kind of guy, and I'm not real good at organizing stuff. And I'm usually, doing stuff in the tech lab next door here and all that kind of stuff. So it's nice having her as a kind of a nice factor to keep me on the straight and narrow here and, keep me focused on what I have to do here at work. And we just get along so well together. It's not like, well, how can you work with your wife? It's like, well, because we really love and respect one another and we get along great. We've been together for 7 years and have never argued about anything. So, that's just the kind of relationship we have. So it's pretty awesome.
Well, again, congratulations. And,
Thank you.
You did mention that you were in a band with her and played rhythm guitar. And, obviously we want to talk mostly about model airplanes, but it does remind me that I convinced you to buy a guitar amp from Positive Grid, the Spark.
Yeah, awesome little amp.
Yeah, during COVID. So are you still playing regularly? Do you find the time?
I honestly, I don't play that much. Every once in a while, I'll go grab it and I'll jam on it a little bit. I really should get back and do it more. I used to love, playing guitar, back in the days when, I was in my band and I had a band with her and some other guys from our church. But then in my late 30s and early 40s, I was in another band, and you may know Al Tahera, who owns Tahera Microsystems Engineering, another RC company. He was the lead guitar player in our band. And then we had another guy who was it was all guys from our flying field. We all got to talking one day, and it's like, well, I used to play bass. Well, I used to play keyboard. Well, I used to play guitar. Well, I used to play lead. Well, let's get together and jam. So we did, and we formed a band called Silver Wolf. And we played a few gigs back then, and we just had a blast. So I've always enjoyed music as a hobby, in addition to RC. And then my other sort of secondary hobby now is 3D printing. I've got like a dozen 3D printers, and I'm always making stuff. And I need a bracket for something, or a little piece will break on one of our windows that you can't buy anymore. So I'll unscrew one off another window and design it in SolidWorks and 3D print it and put it back together. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. There's just nothing more satisfying than like coming up with an idea, designing a part, throwing it on the printer, and 3 hours later you have it in your hand. It's there. It's just the rapid turnaround of manufacturing with that is just really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the show before, but just really quick, for people that do come to AMA to Muncie, we're only an hour and 15 minutes away from Sweetwater, which is in Fort Wayne,
Right.
and they are the largest single music store. So, I mean, they don't have chains of stores like, say, Guitar Center or Sam Ash, but for a single music center, they're the largest one in the entire United States.
Yeah.
And even if you're not into music, they sell stuff for podcasting and doing web shows, and they have a lot of events. So if people are music minded or even YouTube minded or podcast minded, they've been a great resource. And I'm actually going there next month, August 24th. They're having a thing called Guitar Fest. It's just a one day, but they're bringing in all these manufacturers, and they're actually bringing in musicians, so you can meet musicians. So one of the musicians they're bringing is Yngwie Malmsteen. So I'm looking forward to meeting Yngwie. I saw him in concert back in the 90s. So anyway, not sponsored content or anything. I'm just sharing if you're
I've been to that store 2 or 3 times myself, and I bought a guitar there and drove there and picked it up and brought it back home, because it's a 2-hour drive from my house. It's not too far. Yeah, and it's a nice little Saturday, little mini road trip kind of a thing. And I mean, they've got a warehouse as big as a super Walmart store there, and they've got a concert venue. They've got a cafeteria in the place. They've got a full recording studio there. They do like School of Rock kind of, classes and stuff. So yeah, it is an entire music center.
And there. They have video games.
Yeah.
They can play for free. So anyway, well, to steer things back towards RC, I want to mention a comment we have here from Greg Gimlick. Tell Lucian hello and let him know how much I appreciate all the support he's given my column and readers over the years. He's the best and always willing to help people.
Yeah, I've chatted with Greg a few times. We've provided power systems for kits that he's reviewed in the magazines and stuff, and we always, enjoy doing that to help them out, to help power the kits that they're reviewing. So there's a lot of writers from different magazines that I've worked with in the past.
Well, one of the things we were talking about previously is that I think everybody appreciates all the data that you provide, Lucian, on your website. So if I built, say, a kit, or I'm converting a gas or glow airplane to electric, you give so much data to help people pick the right motor. And if there's still confusion, you're happy to get on the phone and help. And I know in the past we've looked to you to help us with electric motors for review projects. But I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, because we talked before, maybe we have somebody that's watching this now, or maybe they're watching it in the future, and they don't know a lot about electric power systems and motors. So, I'm going to ask you a couple of just very basic questions for those that might not know. So obviously the majority of what we're using are called outrunner motors, but there's also in-runner motors that typically use a gearbox. So could you tell us a little bit about the difference in the two, and why the hobby has mostly gone to outrunners?
Well, yeah, I've got a sampling of motors here. This is a pretty typical outrunner motor. And with an outrunner motor, it's called an outrunner motor because the whole outside of the motor spins. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look down inside of the motor, you can see that there's a stator assembly with all the wire wrapped around the stator coil, and then there's a very thin gap. And these kind of motors that we sell, most of them have a 12 slot stator with 14 magnets in the rotor can. And what that does is it gives you a natural 7-to-1 gear reduction magnetically within the motor. Because when a speed controller goes through all 3 phases of a 3-phase motor, the motor rotates through 2 magnets. And so if you have 14 magnets in the rotor can, it takes 7 complete commutation cycles for the motor to make 1 rotation. And because of that, you get a torque amplification effect. And so that's why all your outrunner motors are typically direct drive, because you've got so much more torque. With an in-runner motor, what you typically have is you have a coil of wire around the outside of the motor, and the can stays fixed. And down the core of the motor is a cylindrical magnet that's like about the size of a AA battery. And the length of it depends on the length of the motor. And that magnet typically has 4 magnetic poles. When they put it in a magnetic machine that forces the magnetism into it. And so you've got a north pole, and then a south pole from the sides. And then you'll typically have like 3 coils, or sometimes you'll have, 5 or some, weird odd number, some, or 9, or, they do make some that have like 8 magnet poles on the magnet assembly, but most of them have 4. And because of that, it only takes 2 cycles of the speed controller to make the motor go around one time. So to get the same torque out of that kind of a motor, you have to run it through like a 3.5 to 1 or a 4 to 1 gearbox reduction to amplify the torque. But at the same time, you got to turn the motor 3.5 or 4 times faster. Where a motor like this, this size, you'll throw like an 11.7 prop on it. It'll turn direct drive at 10 or 11,000 RPM. When you have an in-runner motor, it'll be turning at like 40,000 RPM. And then you gear it down through, a 3.5 to 1 or a 4 to 1 gearbox to get, 10 or 12,000 RPM at the prop. So that's kind of the big difference between, an in-runner versus an outrunner motor. Because the outrunner motors don't require a gearbox, they are simpler, they're quieter. You don't have all the gear, grindy noise that you get with a gearbox. The only downside to them is because the whole rotor can of the motor spins, these are a little more difficult to fit into a tight application, like in the nose of a motor glider or something like that. You got to make provisions. The can can't rub against the fuselage, where if you had an in-runner, it can be right up against the fuselage and it doesn't matter. So, that's kind of in a nutshell the difference between the 2 kinds of motors.
Well, perfect. I appreciate the insight. We've got another comment from Dave. Says, Lucian is local to me and he is really helpful when I'm building electric planes.
Yeah, we do. We don't have a showroom here at Innov8tive Designs. We just got office space, tech lab, and a warehouse. But we do have a handful of local customers that will drop by. If anybody does want to come by, we just ask you to call us first to make sure that I'm going to be here. Because sometimes I do have to step out for something, or I may be gone, at an event or something like that. So it's always best to just give us a quick call and make sure we're here. And a lot of guys will place an order over the phone, and then we'll do like a will call pickup. They just come to the office and pick it up if they need it same day. Or sometimes we get guys that are like from Kentucky, but they're visiting their brother up in the Detroit area. And where we're located, we're like literally a half a mile off of I-75 that comes down through Detroit and Monroe and goes down into Toledo. So guys will swing by here on their way, pick something up. But for the most part, 99+% of our business is mail order.
So for those that don't know, give us a brief history lesson. When did Innov8tive Designs start? Where did the name come from? And how have you expanded the company over the years?
Well, Innov8tive Designs is actually the 3rd radio control company that I've owned. I started this company in 2006. So we're in our 18th year now with Innov8tive Designs. Prior to that, you got a photo of me at my very first trade show with my very first company. That's a much younger and a much darker hair and a much skinnier version of me when I was 23 years old back at the Toledo show in 1984. And I had come up with a product called No Heat Trim Solvent for putting monocoat over the top of monocoat without using an iron. It was a solvent that softened the glue on the back of monocoat and made it sort of like packing tape adhesive consistency. And so you could lay it down, squeegee it down, it would stick, and then it would hold it down. And so that was like my first foray into radio control modeling as a business. And then shortly after that, I did that for many years. That was the only thing I sold, and my only goal was to make enough money doing this to where I could afford to buy an airplane and a radio every now and then and finance my hobby. And so I did that. And then in 1990, right after I graduated from college and got my electrical engineering degree, I started another company, and I came up with a product called the ball bearing servo conversion kit. And at that time, when you bought a radio, like you bought a Futaba Conquest radio or a Futaba FG, 5FG, 7FG, or 6FG radio, they actually came with a receiver and 4 servos. And the servos at the time were like the old S28s or 38s or 48s in the AM. And then when we started getting into the narrow band, we had the 128, 138, 148. And all 6 of those servos had the same top. But it was a molded plastic top with a molded plastic gear that would come out and twist back and forth, that the servo arm went on. And back at that time in the late 80s, I was flying a lot of RC pylon racing, and the servos would just get real sloppy after about a dozen flights. And so I came up with an idea I designed the tooling and had a mold made, and I made new servo tops that had a ball bearing in them that you could take the top off of your standard servo, put this ball bearing top on it, and it would make the shaft solid tight. And we sold a set of 4 of those for the same price as what you'd pay for at that time, a ball bearing servo. And so we sold thousands and thousands and thousands of those things. And that kind of launched my business a little bit, more into the RC hobby industry. And in the first year of doing that, I made, 3 times more money than I was making as an electronic technician working for a company that I was working for. So I decided, hey, might as well do this full time. So I kind of got into the hobby business full time and did that and did a lot, did the trade show circuit and did all that kind of stuff. And then I ended up getting divorced in 1998. And so I sold that business off and kind of divested myself of all my hobby stuff. And I moved out to California, and I just got a job, and just kind of went back to civilian life for a while. But then in 2005, I was real heavy into RC groups, and I was doing all kinds of build threads. Back then, there was a guy named Steve Shoemate who was making a lot of what they called RC park jets out of Depron foam, and they were rewinding CD-ROM motors. This was like at the birth of brushless motor technology. And my friend Al Tahara called me and says, man, you got to get back in the hobby. There's this new thing called LiPo batteries, and people are doing CD-ROM motors, and there's this new stuff called Depron that people are making airplanes out of. So I kind of got back into the hobby at that time in 2005 and started making, all these things. And I got with Steve Shoemate, and he let me use his plans, and I blew them up, and I made like 150 and 166 and 175% enlargements. And I've got an F-18 out there. I still have it, that's like 6 foot long with a 4 foot wingspan, and it only weighs about 4.5 pounds. So you just hold it out in front of you and let it go, and it takes right off and flies. And so, I got real heavy into that and kind of got back into the hobby. And one day on RC groups, I saw a post from a new guy whose name was Scorpion ESC. And he had posted, hey, my name is George, and I'm from Belgium, and I'm currently living in Hong Kong. And I'm developing a new series of motors and speed controllers, and I'm looking for beta testers. So I reached out to the guy, and I sent him some information about that and about myself, and sent him some of my build threads and stuff like that. And he says, oh yeah, you're perfect. You're just the kind of guy we're looking for. And so I got on the beta test team, and I started working with them, testing their motors and speed controllers. In fact, I still have those, or I should have grabbed them. I still have those original motors and speed controllers in a box in my tech lab right there. But I was testing them, and there was some issues with the speed controllers, and me being an electrical engineer, I told him, hey, send me the schematics, and I found the problem with them, and I helped them redesign the speed controllers to where they work better. And he was like, oh, so thankful that, I was able to help him with that. And one thing led to another. And then in, I think, July of 2006, him and his family came from Hong Kong to San Marcos, California, the town that I lived in, because they were going to go to Legoland, which was over in Oceanside, California. And so he's like, wow, what a quirk of fate. And he said, hey, I'd like to meet you. It's like, okay. So we met, we went out to lunch and stuff, and we talked. And, I kind of asked him, I said, well, when you come out with these motors, what are you going to do with them? He says, well, I'm looking for a U.S. distributor that can help me, distribute these motors. And at that time, I was working as an electrical engineer at a company that did underwater oceanographic survey stuff. And I did a lot of stuff with the sensors and the sonar and the computers and all that kind of stuff back then. And I said, I'm looking to get back into the hobby industry. So we kind of chatted back and forth, and one thing led to another. In October of 2006, George and I worked out an agreement where I would be the U.S. distributor of the new Scorpion brand of motors and speed controllers. And we debuted them at the AMA West show in Ontario, California in January of 2007. And, I built that brand from the ground up, did all the marketing and all of the, and that's where I invented the concept of the prop data chart, which we now have. I sent you a link to a sample of one of those if you wanted to bring that up. But we test the motors at multiple voltages. We'll test them like this particular motor here is our new badass 3530 630 motor that I designed for the Senior Pattern Association. This motor just became available a couple weeks ago, and we tested it on 4 cells. And if you scroll up, you can see we tested it on 5 cells. We tested it on 6 cells. And there's 132 different combinations of propellers and voltages in this prop chart. And that's the kind of extensive data that we started producing so that you could see exactly how many amps and how many watts and what RPM and how many ounces of thrust that your motor would make. Because so many companies, all you get on their website is a picture of the motor and the price. That's it. They don't tell you the weight. They don't tell you, you can see all the performance data up there at the top, the motor KV, the no load current, winding resistance, the different IO values at different voltages and all that kind of stuff, the motor weight, motor diameter and length. And if you go look at that motor on our website, we've also got CAD drawings showing, the outside dimensions of the motor. If you click on the thumbnail there for the CAD drawing, you can see, we've got all the dimensions, and then we give all the dimensions of the prop adapter and also for the cross mounts on all of our motors. So you know exactly what you're getting, exactly the performance you're going to get from it and everything. And so, we built that brand up, and I worked with George up until 2018. I was the U.S. distributor for Scorpion Motors, and in October of 2018, Scorpion kind of took a different direction, and they looked to George at that time was stepping down and doing some stuff, and they over the years their business sort of progressed predominantly to helicopter motors, and I was always predominantly an airplane guy, and so we did both the airplane side and the helicopter side. But in 2018, they wanted a more helicopter company to take over the distribution. And because of some, things that happened in my life, I wasn't able to do the trade shows as often as I wanted to do, or as often as they wanted me to do them. And so they decided to give the Scorpion distributorship to Mikado USA. And so at that time, I decided to develop my own line of motors, which became, the badass motors. And somewhere in the middle there, I also picked up the Cobra brand. When I went to the Shanghai Model Show in 2010, I spoke with the owners of a company that made some great motors, but they just weren't Americanized. There's a lot of companies, a lot of Chinese companies make products, and they got goofy slogans, and they got bad, PR and certain design characteristics that aren't that great. So I worked with them and fine-tuned their product and created the Cobra brand and the Cobra look and the packaging and the styling and all that kind of stuff. And I helped them develop the Cobra brand and became the U.S. distributor for that brand as well in 2010. And so we've been carrying that line of motors for 14 years now. And then in 2018, I designed the Badass brand of products, and we were the exclusive distributor of those. We do have another dealer in Mesquite, Nevada, RC Dude Hobbies, that we work very closely with. I think Randy's watching the show. Give a shout out to Randy, the owner of RC Dude Hobbies. But we work together on a daily basis with a lot of stuff, and we team up and do a lot of work together on an ongoing basis. So you can get the products from us. You can get them from Randy or at RC Dude Hobbies. And there's a couple of other places that are like control line specialty stores, because our Badass motors have just gone crazy with the control line community in the precision aerobatics. And so we have some companies that are using our motors in their airplanes. And so we've made an arrangement with them to also sell a select few motors that go in their airplanes. And then a couple of years ago, we picked up the Tempest brand. This was, again, another brand of motors that we worked with a company with and helped to rebrand and get it all set up. And this was more of a lower cost brand for people that were budget conscious but didn't want to order something from Hobby King or Good Luck Buy or Alibaba and have to wait 3 months to get it. We could get them a good product that was backed here in the United States with the prop charts, with all the data that we're so famous for doing. And so that's kind of how the whole thing evolved. And over that time, we've become the premier electric power system company here in the United States.
Well, I know just off camera, you've got some of your products that you wanted to share and talk about. So I will turn it over to you and let you share a little bit about what you have for show and tell today.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, we just introduced this new the Badass 3530 630 motor. All of our Badass motors come packaged like a Swiss watch. Very nice packaging with the protective foam, and you get a full hardware kit with a cross mount, prop adapter, bullet connectors for your speed controller, heat shrink, all that kind of stuff. So this is a new motor that we developed for the senior pattern guys, but it's also like an awesome motor for 60 size ugly stick or any 60 size airplane that you want to shove the power of like an 80 glow engine in. That's the ticket for that. Some of the other things, back about 3 months ago, we introduced our new Badass 62 millimeter series, and we have two sizes in that. We have a 6230, and then we have the 6245. The 6230 works in airplanes that would use normally like a 30 to a 45 cc gas engine, even upwards of a 50. And then this one here is more of the 50 to almost an 80 cc gas equivalent. And with our Badass props, we have the props all the way from 10 inch up to 30 inch now. So we have a nice wide selection. We recently reintroduced our Badass speed controllers. This is one of our Badass Renegade series, and all of our Badass speed controllers now feature on the fly thrust reversing. On the end of the connector here, you've got your standard 3-pin connector, but then you've got that also that third yellow wire, and that's your reverse channel switching. And when you activate the reverse thrust mode on these things, you typically plug this wire, the yellow wire, into like channel 5 on a retract channel if your plane doesn't have retracts, or you can do it on channel 7 or something like that. But at any throttle setting below 50% throttle, if you flip that switch, what it does is it applies the brake, stops the prop, and then it goes right back in the opposite direction, whatever throttle setting it was at. So if you do it at 40% throttle, it'll stop and go to 40% reverse throttle. Or and once it switches, you have full throttle range from 0 to 100% in reverse. And any of you guys there that were at the AMA Fun Flight this year and last year, Cal Orr has his jet that he flew. He has 4 ducted fans on it. He had a set of 4 of these speed controllers in there, and he could come in for a landing. And usually, you got these big 15-pound ducted fan jets, and they come in a little hot. They take about 250 or 300 feet to roll to a stop. Well, he would touch down, and the second he touched down, he'd flip the switch and go full throttle. And it's crazy because it sounds just like a real jet when it goes into reverse thrust. And instead of taking 300 feet to roll out, it would stop at about 50 feet. And then he drove his airplane into the pits, and when he came up to the pits, he drove out and away and then backed in to his spot and then shut it down. So, it kind of adds a new level of, coolness to your airplane. Or if you got a plane like a Draco or a Maul or, a Fun Cub or something like that, and you want to be able to come in for a landing, and then as soon as you touch down, flip and give it a blip of full throttle reverse, you can shorten your rollout to like 4 feet if you want. So that's kind of a cool feature. We've got also have our Rebel series. This is our basic series of our speed controllers with the standard heat shrink wrap. Our Renegade series is the higher end one with the metal heat sink. And this one's got a few more features in it. You can adjust the BEC to more voltages. And then for our bigger 62 millimeter motors, we have the new high voltage series speed controllers. This is our badass Renegade 160, and this one has a 10 amp switching BEC that's up to 20 amps peak. And this one has got 2 leads on it because these kind of connectors can only handle about 5 amps of current. So when you got a 10 amp BEC, you got to send it down 2 wires. So you've got enough amperage capability without overheating the connectors. And so this one has the control lead on this one, and then it has the secondary battery lead, and then over here is your reverse thrust switching on it. So these are also available as an opto version. So if you have a big plane and you don't want to use a BEC, you want to use a separate 2-cell life pack or something to control the radio and the servos and everything, you can do that as well. Some of the other things, our original badass Renegade speed controllers, on the larger ones, they came with a little plastic mounting clip that allowed you to mount these easier, so you didn't have to put like Velcro on them. And one of the cool things about having SolidWorks and a 3D printer is I can make whatever I want. I just designed this part here. This is a 3D printed mounting clip. You can see how it grips right around the speed controller. And you bolt this into your airplane, and then your speed controller just snaps right into it, and it's locked in place. And then if you need to take it out, you can just pull it right back out again. But we sell this with 4 mounting screws, so you can put that in your airplane. New product we just released last week that I designed. And we work real closely with Mark Lanterman over at Old School Model Works. If you throw up that image of you and me together in our booth at the Toledo show back in 2018, Mark was in this booth right next door to us. You can see his banner there. Yeah. And so I've been working with Mark for about the last 4 years now. We provide power system recommendations for all of his kits, and we've become a dealer of his kits, so we also sell them. So we've got kind of a reciprocal agreement. But this was the Toledo show in 2018. You happened to stop by the booth. We got a picture of you and me together in the booth there. And so one of the things that Mark approached me on, he heard I was really into 3D printing, and he was coming out with an airplane called the Minuet. And the Minuet is basically sort of a standoff scale of an old Blériot, single monoplane, French design. And that airplane, I don't know if you want to find his website, bring up a picture of the kit or anything, but it's so people know what a Blériot looks like. But it was powered with an engine called an Anzani W3 engine. which was like a kind of like a Harley motorcycle engine, but instead of having 2 cylinders in a V, it had 3 cylinders in a V. And he wanted to have like a dummy motor that he could sell with that kit to put on it. So I drew this thing up in SolidWorks, which is sort of like the outer case of the Anzani W3 engine. And it's got like little scale exhaust ports and spark plugs. And on the back, it's got some intake tubes and a little distributor cap there and then it's just got some 20 gauge wire, going from the spark plugs down to the distributor cap. And what you do with this thing is when you have a motor on the front of your airplane like this bolted on, this thing slides over the front like this, and it hides the motor. So from a distance, when you're looking at the plane, it looks like it's got the Anzani W3 engine on it, but it's hiding a 2814 size electric motor inside, which is what that airplane uses. So, and this is done with a resin printer that uses UV curable resin, and you can get much, much finer detail with this process because it lays down layers that are only 1/10 of a millimeter thick, which is like 4/1000 of an inch. So you can get very, very, very good detail with this kind of printing. Another product that we make, which is 3D printing, is our series of our 3D printed motor mounts. Many times when you go to put a glow engined airplane and convert it to electric, a 40 size glow engine from the back of the motor mount to the face of where the prop adapt driver would be is typically about 4 inches. But if you look at a motor, they're typically only about 2 inches long, and you need to have a couple of inches of space behind it. So we made these things that the motor can bolt to and space the motor up off the firewall. And then the back of it has the same footprint as the cross mount that would come with this motor. And so that gives you the distance that you need to get the prop drive out the 4 inches from the firewall, where it used to be from the firewall in the glow powered airplane. And I had a guy that recently reached out to me, and he had an old Skylark 56, and kind of like the Eaglet airplane, it had like the plywood rail. I had like a U-shaped piece of 1/4 inch plywood that the motor mounted, and it was already done, and he didn't have a firewall. So I designed this piece for him, which essentially what it is it's the mounting lug pattern of an OS-46 engine, but it has the place on the front to mount your motor. So your motor goes on the front of this like this, and then this drops down into the airplane, and it put the prop drive washer the same distance ahead of the mounting lug holes that would be on an OS-46 2-stroke engine. So that's what so cool about 3D printers is I just went into SolidWorks, drew this part up, took me about an hour, and slap it on a printer and custom make a motor mount for the guy. So we do a lot of stuff like that there. Stuff you could get done no place else. So if you got a special application where you got a weird motor mount stuff, you can check with us, and we can more than likely get your motor mounted in your airplane in one way or another.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. And I know that we've got a picture of you working at your computer. And it's amazing. As I mentioned earlier, you have all these monitors. So
yeah, people come into my office and they go, what do you like, Space Command Center? I'm 63 years old now, and as we get older, it's kind of hard to see anymore. And I used to have a setup where I had a Dell 30-inch monitor in the middle, and I had a pair of 24s turned in portrait orientation on either side of it. And that worked really well for when I'm doing like Word documents, because if you've got a big monitor, it this way you can only use this center portion of it. But if your monitor is like this, you can put a whole page on it and have it be twice as big. And nowadays, the new 4K TVs are so good. There's certain ones you got to be careful. You can't just buy a cheap $129 TV because it's not going to work well as a monitor. I've got the LG 7 series, and the Samsung 7 series also work very well to use as monitors. But it's a 4K TV, so I have a 43-inch monitor as my primary monitor, and I've got a 30-inch turned sideways on either side of it. And then up above it, I've got a 55-inch kind of tilted back at me. So if I'm in the middle of doing something, I want to throw some reference drawings up above, to refer to. I can have like 7 different things open at the same time. I've got so much real estate space. And I also wanted to get the monitors up off the desk. And if you look real careful, you can see there's a 4-foot by 7-foot sheet of plywood that I painted flat black bolted to the wall. And then I've got monitor brackets. The 2 side ones are articulating swinging ones, so I can change the angle and I can tip them up and down. The bottom one is just fixed flat against the wall, but the top one kind of tilts down towards me, so it's easier to view. And I spend 10 hours a day in front of this massive monitor setup doing my motor design work. And what you're seeing on the screen there it was me when I was designing the badass 62 millimeter motors. That's the 6245 there in a cutaway on the screen. So that's kind of what I have for my monitor setup. A lot of people come in here and they're a little jealous, because of what I got. But with today's prices, it's I've got less than $1,000 in all 4 monitors, because you can buy the TVs inexpensive. You do have to have a good video card though. I've got a NVIDIA 3070 video card with 4 outputs on it, so I'm driving all 4 monitors from one really high-end, $600 video card. But it works really well for me, and lets me do what I need to do every day.
Since you had a picture of the motor that you were designing, and you talked about you just released one that you designed, what kind of, just for curiosity for people watching, how long does it take to come up with a concept for a motor to it's available for purchase? I know it varies, but just ballpark, what kind of time frame were you looking at?
Well, it depends on whether it's a completely new brand from the get-go, and you're trying to design, like when I designed the badass motors, it was about a 1-year process from the time I started doing stuff until I flushed out the design and figured out all the different styling details I wanted to have in the motor, and all the different kV values that we wanted to produce and everything, and then get them made and get that first order in. But now that it's developed, like if I want to add a new motor, the factory that I work with that makes my badass motors, a lot of times I can draw up a revised version of an existing motor in 4 or 5 hours, convert all those files into step drawings so they can enter it into their CNC equipment. And like 3 weeks later, I can have prototypes sitting on my desk that I can go run in the test stand. And that's what, works out really well. If I want to add something to an existing product line, I can do it in, like a 1-month turnaround. And then when we go into full production and we order, a couple of hundred of that new motor, for example, that'll be like another 6 weeks. So from start of concept to delivered product can be anywhere from, 10 to 12 weeks, and I can have a new product out. Other designs that are for companies, I did a new design. This is a motor that goes that I designed for a drone company that goes in a it's like a cruise missile looking kind of a thing that shoots out of a tube and the wings open up and it flies off, and it flies at about 160 miles an hour and travels about 160 kilometers per mission, and they were using one of our other brand off-the-shelf motors, and they were getting about 100-kilometer range, and the motor was overheating a little bit, and I got with them. I said, hey, I can design you a custom motor that will run cool and greatly extend your range for only, a few dollars more than you're paying for this, off-the-shelf motor. And from the time I, sat down at SolidWorks till I delivered the first prototypes was about 7 weeks. And they put them in the airplane, and it increased their range by 60%. They went from being able to go 100 kilometers to being able to go 160 kilometers on the same battery pack. They were ecstatic. They were like losing their minds. They were so excited about how well this, motor, did. So, and that's a part of our business that we really don't even advertise. We've got a commercial side of our business where I design motors for custom applications. I have certain commercial clients that buy thousands of motors from me every year. I have one that makes water pumps for competition bass boats, for circulating the water in the live well and the bait well tanks to keep the fish alive. And in those applications, the motors run in a housing that's flooded with a dielectric liquid coolant that's kind of like transformer oil, so it doesn't conduct any electricity. And on those kind of motors, there's no holes anywhere. You can see there's no holes in the bottom other than the threaded mounting holes, no holes in the sides, and the shafts are made out of 316 stainless steel because the shaft does get exposed to salt water. But these things run flooded in a housing. And so we want to minimize the viscous drag of the fluid. So if you had a bunch of holes in it, like you do with an air-cooled motor, it's chopping up the fluid and foaming it up and stuff. Where, we make 4 different sizes of motors like this, for this client. So, they get that. And then I have another client that does a similar thing with underwater thruster pods that are used in those little tethered ROVs, like you see, Jacques Cousteau, using her in the old days, or like when they're searching for the Titanic and you see these little underwater robots coming down. This particular motor is a very low kV motor. It only has a kV of 150 because it runs on a tethered 48 volt system. And so it needs a very low kV to run on 48 volts. And this motor goes, again, inside a sealed fluid-filled housing with pressure compensation so that the pressure inside the motor and the pressure outside of the water equalize, so you don't get any saltwater intrusion or anything into that. We make a bunch of motors for that company. And we've made motors that have gone into medical devices. If you've ever looked at the DeLorean DR7 flying car concept that Paul DeLorean has been working on, who's the nephew of John DeLorean of DeLorean car fame. I designed the motors that went into that product for the 1/6 scale proofs of concept and the 1/3 scale demonstrator, and now the full size one. And those motors are about about that big around and about that tall, and they put out 200 horsepower each. And other projects I've worked on in the past, if you've ever looked up the NASA Greased Lightning GL-10 aircraft. Yeah, I worked with NASA on that project, and we developed a custom motor through Scorpion at that time for them for that project. And I've done custom motors for Bell Helicopter and Vayu Aerospace and a whole bunch of other companies. So, if anybody's out there that works at a company that needs a custom motor for a commercial application, we also do that. We don't advertise that service because, quite frankly, we get so much word of mouth that we stay busy enough with that I don't know what we do if we actually advertise. But it's been nice to do that, and that side of the business does well for us. And but the true of is always working with the hobbyists, and a lot of people call us and want us to help them pick out a motor, and so we will write a rather lengthy power system recommendation. I don't know if you've got the link to that power system. Yeah, that power system recommendation page. And so this is a work in progress that me and my webmaster have been putting together. I send him all of these things. But if you go down and if you pick on one, that like the Hanger 9 Ultra Stick. Okay, let's go back there and click on like a Hanger 9 Ultra Stick. the 10cc ultra stick there. You can see how, we'll tell the person, what they need. And then, this guy specifically wanted a 5-cell option for his airplane. So we go through and tell the guy, what batteries to use and what prop's going to work best on it. And then give him the data from the prop chart showing, how much current and thrust he's going to get. And then we give links to the motor, speed controller, the props, and if he needs batteries, the batteries and that kind of stuff. So that's one of the services that we offer. If you have a kit and you're looking for a power system and you just, you're coming into it from the glow world and you have no idea what to do for electric, or even if you've been doing electric a while and all you've done is little foamy ARF planes for E-Flight or, Tower Hobbies or, anything like that, and you're doing your first bigger, like built airplane, or you're wanting to do another kind of a larger airplane, you just don't have any idea what to do, you can look here, and if you see the plane, cool. If not, you can send us an email to info@innovativedesigns.com and let us know what airplane you're doing. And on the old school Model Works kits, we have complete power system recommendations for all of their aircraft. And as I said, this is a work in progress. We started doing this about a year ago. And I mean, there's literally hundreds of power system recommendations because I do 2 or 3 a day every day. So I'm doing like, 700-800 power system recommendations a year or more in some cases. And we're trying to put all of that archive of data into here so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. If somebody wants to look at, another thing that we have that's is a great option is our the tab to the left of that one, I think on your browser, is our motor matching chart. And this thing here, you can see in the far left, we have our Badass, Cobra, and Tempest brands of motors. And then we have like 12 other, top, common brand, Axie, E-Flight, Hacker, Rimfire, T-Motor, Suppo, a lot of other. And if, a lot of times if you're buying a Hangar 9 kit and they're recommending an E-Flight Power 32 motor. Well, if you scroll down on that chart to the second page and you get into where the Power 32 is, and then there you find the Power 32, which is a 770 kV motor, and then you can follow that line across and you can see the 3 Badass, Cobra, and Tempest motors, which would be the closest to replicating the power of that motor in the same physical size, same power output, same kV. So that's another resource we have. The other one, the next tab over to the left on your screen right there, is our 2-stroke glow to electric conversion chart. Here, with any glow engine, glow engines are so easy. You take a 40 size glow engine, it doesn't matter who makes it, what it is, you slap a 10.6 prop on it, you go fly, you're done. It's that easy. If you want maybe an 11.5 or maybe a 9.8 if you want to go fast. And that's pretty much it. But with electric motors, they work the exact opposite of a glow engine. Glow engines push power into the prop. Electric motors, the prop pulls the power out of the motor. So prop selection is super critical with electric motors. You can take a motor that's, a power 60 motor, for example, but if you only put a 10.6 prop on it, it's only going to make the power of a 20. You put a 12.6 prop on it, it's only going to make the power of a 40. You got to put that 14.7 prop on that motor in order to have it make the power of a 60. But if you run on 5 cells instead of 6 cells, well, then it's a completely different prop because you need a bigger prop to pull the power out of the motor. So it gets to be a little bit confusing with electric motors. And so we made that 2-stroke, conversion chart, which kind of gives you a middle of the road place that will work. It may not be the absolute optimized best motor, but plus or minus 10% of the best motor, that will work, and you can very quickly choose something like that using that. But if you have a special application that needs a bigger prop or a smaller prop, then you might need a different kV motor that turns a smaller prop but spins it faster in order to make the right amount of power you need.
Well, like I said before, you provide so much data that it makes it a lot easier for people. And one of the things I want to ask you too, I mean, in thinking about the future, um, is there any technology or any changes that you see coming to brushless motors or speed controls that you might be excited about?
Well, the next big innovation is going to be batteries. Right now, the brushless motors, we're already north of 90% efficiency with motors. We're already 97, 98% efficiency with speed controllers. There's really no more significant gains to be found with motor or speed controller technology. However, batteries is where the next big thing. If y'all remember back 20 years ago when lipos first came on the market, at the end of 2004, beginning of 2005. And back then we had like 7C discharge batteries or 10C discharge batteries was the hot ticket back then. So if you had a 4,000 milliamp hour pack, you could pull 40 amps from it. Now we got 1,200 milliamp hour packs that people are pulling 100 amps through in these racing quadcopters and crazy stuff like that. But back then, when we made that leap from NiCads and nickel metal hydrides to LiPo batteries, we saw almost a 3 or 4-fold increase in energy density. It used to be that if you wanted to have a 4-pound electric powered radio control airplane, you had to build a 12-ounce airframe and then put 3¼ pounds of motors and batteries in it to have a 4-pound airplane. And back then we were doing all subsea NiCads, 1.2 volt, 2,200 milliamp hour, and in order to get any appreciable power, you had to put like 12 or 18 or 20 batteries in series, and you literally had 3 and 4 pounds of batteries. And then back then we were running, like the Astroflight brushed motors, which were very heavy, the cobalt brushed motors. And now, a 3-cell 2,200 pack, which typically only weighs about 6 ounces, has more energy storage than like a 24-ounce equivalent NiCad pack. Now, there's some new technology coming around the corner with some sodium ion batteries that use a variation of table salt, which is like very readily available. You can just dip it out of the ocean. You don't have to strip mine lithium to get the chemicals you need to make the batteries. And some other things where if we were to see another doubling of the energy density in batteries, and you could fly, or even if they had another 3 or 4-fold increase, like right now when you go to fly your 60 size pattern plane, you got a 6S 5000 pack that weighs almost 2 pounds. Okay, imagine instead of a pack that big, you had a pack that was the same size as a 3S 2200 that might only weigh 7 ounces, that could fly, a 60 size pattern plane for 10 minutes. That's going to be the next plateau, or, the next big thing in RC, as far as I can see, is battery technology. And it's usually slow to come. They start out with stuff that can only do so many, either a very low discharge rate or not much capacity, but as they develop it, it gets better and better. I've seen batteries that they use in electric scooters now over in like Japan and China and places like that, where there a lot of people have electric scooters that they were able to charge in like 5 minutes. Charging them at like a 20C charge rate, and just crazy performance. And the battery only raise in temperature about 15 degrees Fahrenheit during the charge process. And so, that's kind of a cool thing, where if you had a battery like that in your airplane, then, you could land, recharge it in 5 minutes, and then go fly again, and then land, recharge it in 5 minutes, and go fly again. So you'd only have to have one battery in your plane. And, because like now, with our lipos, they take an hour to charge, and you typically have to take 3 or 4 batteries to the flying field if you want to put 3 or 4 flights on. And if you've got like a little portable generator and a field pack and all this stuff, you can be using one and charging 2 and have one on standby and keep rotating batteries and get a flight in every 20 minutes all day long if you're constantly rotating your batteries through your charge setup. But yeah, I really see the next frontier is going to be batteries.
Well, that'll definitely be exciting for sure. Because lipos now for RC use or any aero modeling use has been around quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 20-year-old technology really now.
Mm-hmm. I also want to mention for those that aren't aware, the NATs are going on right now. Currently today we're having IMAC, and we've got the NATs all through the rest of this month and the first week of next month. And want to be sure to thank you, Lucian, because you're a sponsor of the NATs.
Yeah, we came on board last year as a platinum sponsor of the NATs, and we re-upped for this year to be a platinum sponsor of the NATs. I grew up in this hobby, and it really saddens me to see kind of what's happened to the hobby. So many flying fields have been lost to development of, housing projects, and now the government's coming in and wanting us to, we can't fly anything that weighs more than 8 ounces because of terrorists, and don't even get me started on that one. But I like to give back to the to the modeling hobby, and us and APC Props are the 2 platinum sponsors of the NATs. We were both platinum sponsors last year as well, and I like to come to the NATs. In fact, I'm going to be there the weekend of August 8th and 9th, because that's when a lot of the control line disciplines are. The control line aerobatics, the control line stunt, speed, that kind of stuff. Primarily control line scale aerobatics, because or the precision aerobatics, because that particular group has just taken on badass motors like crazy. In fact, a couple of years ago at the NATs, I wasn't there that year, but somebody told me they got down to the top 20 and 19 of them were flying badass motors. The only one that wasn't was a guy that had come in that was sponsored by another motor company. He had to use their motor. But so these guys can choose any motor they want. And once our Cobra motors used to dominate that event, but once our badass motors came out, people found out how much more efficient they were and how much more power you could get out of them, and the fact that you could actually use a smaller motor and get the same amount of power, because with control line aerobatics, weight's everything for these guys, and they've really taken the badass line on. And so I like coming down there, and we usually give away a bunch of prizes at the closing event of the precision aerobatics event, and give away free motors to the oldest and youngest and who came the farthest, and some gift certificates to the first, second, and third place guys and all that stuff. But one thing also is the week after the NATs is the World FAI Control Line Championships. This is an event that happens in France one year, and in the Netherlands one year, and in Germany, and Australia and South America and all over the world. And it just so happens that it's in the United States this year, and it's going to be at Muncie AMA headquarters. And so AMA is welcoming the world to the AMA field. And last I heard, I think there was like 36 or 37 countries being represented. And so I'm going to come down probably on Wednesday, I think it's the 14th, and make a day of it and meet, with all of our international pilots that use our products. And I'm going to set up a deal where if they want to buy an order, we're going to send out an announcement to here next week in an email. But anybody that's a NATS competitor that's going to be, at the control line NATS that weekend of the 8th or 9th, or anybody from the world that's going to be there the week of the FAI World Championships, they'll be able to place an order and get free shipping and then I will bring their orders to the AMA site so they can pick them up there. Because if you live in Poland or something like that, because of what's going on over there, especially, or if you're in the Ukraine, a lot of control line pilots over there, they just can't rely on getting stuff. And if they do, it costs $100 for them to use DHL shipping, because you can't really trust the post office over there. And so it'll be a way for guys to be able to get some stuff and just throw it in their luggage and take it home with them and save a lot of money on shipping. So we're gonna work out a deal with that for both the NATS competitors and the FAI World competitors.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate your time today, and I appreciate the support you've given the magazine and AMA. And I just want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap up?
Oh man, I mean, I think I covered all the goodies that I had set out for show and tell over here, and just anybody that's watching, we're here to provide electric power systems for anybody that needs one, and our goal is to get you exactly the right power system for your aircraft, to get you the performance that you're looking for and get it right the first time. So that's what we do. That's what we've done for the last 18 years here at Innov8tive Designs. And if you have a custom design for some company that you work for, you can contact us about that. We've got some new stuff. I'm thinking about branching out into some other areas of the hobby here soon, with some other new motors. Still not sure yet, but we'll see on that. I mean, one of the things we're working on right now is our own line of servos. I mean, a lot of people constantly contact us saying, "Hey, I got the kit, I got the motor. What servos do you recommend?" And you can't go wrong with high-tech servos. They've been around forever. They make great products. But I wanted to carry our own servos, and we're in the midst of doing that right now. I'm doing some testing on some stuff, and we're going to have sort of a sport brand that we'll bring out under the Innov8tive Designs brand name, and then we're going to be doing a premium line, which is going to be like all machined aluminum case, very high-end servos, and then those will be red, black, and silver, and they'll bear the Badass Power Systems brand. So we only put our top tier stuff in the Badass brand, because that's my personal brand that I developed, and that's we only want like the best of the best in that particular brand. So that project is in the works now, and I'm also looking at a bigger place to move to, because we're like busting at the seams here. So we may be moving at the end of the year if I can make this deal happen, so we can like double the amount of space we have. But other than that, we're just kind of like full steam ahead, with Innov8tive Designs, and we've just managed to make it through all of the economic crises over the last since 2006, when we started this company, through the economic downfall of the 2008, when the stock market crashed, and when everything happened, and all the COVID and everything. We've managed to make it through all that and come out stronger in the end. So I have no plans of going anywhere anytime soon. I'll be doing this for a little while, longer yet. So if you need an electric power system for a plane, look us up. We have a full page ad in Model Aviation magazine every month with our contact info, and you can find us at innovativedesigns.com on the web, and that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate it. Want to remind everybody the next show will be August 16th, Friday, August 16th. Lucian, thank you so much, as I said, for your support of the magazine, AMA, and our events, and helping us with the reviews and getting us good power systems and helping our columnists. So it was really fun to chat with you today and talk about your products, and I look forward to seeing you at the NATS.
All right. Well, thanks for having me, and look forward to you guys. Maybe we'll see some of you at the NATS here coming up.
All right. Sounds good. Take care.
All right, buddy. You take care.